This video is all about Tinder, a crucial element to any fire by friction practice. This is something that is simple, and the heart of the concept is that you're looking for dry, fibrous, and non-toxic materials. And this is going to force you to pay attention to your surroundings and source your materials creatively. So in days that are dry and hot, this can be a pretty simple exercise. And days where there have been plenty of rain, snow, or here February ice storms, this can be pretty difficult. But it's always available, it's a crucial element, and it's something that you should become more and more comfortable with. So let's take a look at those concepts. Dry, fibrous, non-toxic. Dry. How do we know that something's dry? Well, we're going to use the sensitive instrument that our skin is and give a feel, use our touch to get a sense of the moisture content. Sometimes it's really obvious, and sometimes it's a little bit more nuanced. So what I'll employ are parts of my skin that are thinner and they are more sensitive. And if I feel a coolness is going to indicate moisture. Moisture is not going to turn over into flame easily, and that's our goal. We want to take this small ember and turn it into flame. So moisture is going to work against us, and we really need to make sure that there's no moisture. So any sort of coolness to touch. Sometimes you might be looking for leaves, and you might be looking on the forest floor, and one leaf might be moist and one leaf might not be, and you want to be aware of those little details. Also, if something is green, it's full of water content. So nothing green, no plant life that's green should be in your Tinder bundle. When we take a look at fibrous, we're looking for a great deal of surface area. So if you were to imagine yourself taking a match to a piece of paper, are you going to hold it to the edge, or are you going to hold it to the middle? You're going to hold it to the edge. And so we want to create a lot of edge surface area. So we're going to be taking materials that we can shred up and break down, that's going to be able to ignite easily. When we get that coal, the perfect amount of food and oxygen, all that surface area is going to really help turn that over and kick into a flame. Non-toxic is going to be specific to where you are. What really is highlighted to me in this area is poison ivy. Broadly speaking, any of those aerosol containing plants, poison ivy, poison sumac, poison oak, what's irritating is the oil content, and when those things are ignited or burned, those oils are kicked up into the air and you have the chance of breathing them in, and that's something that nobody really wants to experience. So being aware of where you're harvesting your materials and making sure that you're not harvesting under or next to or upon any of those plants is going to be really important for the safety of you and those around you. So in so many instances, know those plants, be really familiar with them so that you know how to be aware of them and avoid them as needed. So in looking for Tinder, I'm looking for dry, fibrous, non-toxic. What I think is really cool about this is that you can construct a Tinder bundle and it can be composed of many, many different types of plants. So immediately I'm starting to just look around what's available to me. Sometimes of the year, leaves off the ground are going to work. Sometimes they're not at all. When I want to look for leaves, I want to look for different qualities of leaves that have died back. Some are going to be really desiccated and easily to crumble up, and some are going to be a thicker and waxier material. And I'll still use those maybe, but on the outside of my Tinder bundle, and we'll talk about that. Leaves are a great option. Leaves are an excellent option in the winter months when we have those trees like oak and beech that hold on to their leaves. They're known as marquescent, one of the prettiest words. And they're going to be elevated, exposed to sun and wind, and most often dry. So in the wintertime, I'm always sourcing beech trees, beech leaves that are really common in this area. I'm looking for dead grasses, sedges, things of that nature. I'm looking for dead seed heads of any kind. I'm looking for leaves that have died and are hung up on trees or brambles. I'm looking for barks. Barks can be an excellent source of tinder. You're going to have different trees that are going to yield more or less fibrous barks. And so one that loves the wet places is cedar. Beautiful tree. and the dead bark can be roughed up, either agitated through your hands or scraped with the back edge of a knife or pounded with rocks to make a really light, fluffy, perfect material for tinder bundle. Other trees that come to mind might be the inner bark of black locust, ash, basswood. So these are going to be opportunities for you to harvest tinder. The one bark that I see a lot of people gravitate to is birch bark, and I'm not one to use that in my tinder bundles. Sometimes maybe on the outside, but I'm much more apt to shred it and put it in the internal structure of my fire. And I feel like once that's there and I have a tinder bundle in flame and I'm able to place it in, it's going to catch and work quite well. So I'm not one to shred up birch bark. So you have these concepts down: dry, fibrous, non-toxic. You've moved through the landscape, you found a lot of different materials, and now we want to build this into a tinder bundle. You want to have this available to you before you even start any fire by friction practice that you want to then become a fire. It's really important that you have it and that you don't go through all the effort, make a goal, and then try and scramble around and make a tinder bundle in 25 seconds or less. So you want to be able to construct this tinder bundle, and I think it's helpful to think of it as a bird's nest in a couple of different ways. You know, something that's going to fit in your hand, 2 hands, that is going to have a slight bold depression in it, and it's going to be composed of different materials that are going to be graded or gradated out based on their size and surface area. So if I think of a bird's nest and I think of a small, delicate baby bird, they're going to want to be placed on the softest of materials. And some people will even call those materials that are so fine and have such surface area, so small, as coal extenders. Because they don't quite give the meat to build the coal, but they are going to help build that coal and extend it and make it a little bit larger, that's then going to help ignite all of those other materials. So what do these conceptual baby birds want to sit on? I'm often looking for dead seed heads. So it could be like thistle seed heads. I took a loop right before we got started and I found these. See how fine and airy these are, right? Everybody mostly knows dandelion. I have some coltsfoot here. And so these are the finest of materials that I'm going to line this tinder bundle, aka nest, with. And these are going to help extend that coal. Another interesting material that can be used as a coal extender is the fine insect chew that you'll find in holes of trees. Whether it's ants or what have you, they're breaking it down and it's so small that you can just sprinkle enough in. It's going to be the same size material-wise that your dust from your fire by friction is, that you can help use that to extend that coal. So we have this concept of coal extender, the smallest and finest of your materials and driest. Now we're going to think about that tinder bundle in mass. And so, like I said, I took a quick loop, moved around the landscape for a couple minutes before we got started, and I found some different elements. First off, we have all of these leaves. It's a pretty dry early summer day, so I can hear that they're dry. I can feel that they're dry. So these leaves are going to be great. I'm not swiping at the earth and just grabbing everything that I can get, especially if there's been any moisture or any morning dew or what have you. But the leaves that are elevated and kind of somewhat tented up and above the rest, these are going to be great options. I'm going to remove sticks and I'm going to collect these up. These are particularly decayed leaves, and I sometimes really consider these, and I'll put them closer to the inside of the nest. So when we're thinking about this tinder bundle, we want to see the larger surface area materials to the outside, making their way in a gradated pattern towards the inside to get smaller and smaller, or greater and greater surface area. So the bigger things to the outside, moving towards the smallest things towards the inside. Some other materials I came by was this dead fern frond, elevated, access to wind and sun once again. So we're having something that's dry that can really be crumpled up. last year's goldenrod head. Wonderful. Finer stuff. This is going to go towards the center. We're in a bit of a wet area. It's that coltsfoot, but also all of these sedges. You can really, again, hear like that dryness. So we're using our senses to really confirm what we're looking for. I have a habit of grabbing up sedges or dry grasses and using them as sort of like a structural container. But that's just my own personal style. So I end up making that into that loose format of a nest. In my Fire by Friction kit, always have tinder with me, and I think that that's something that you just start to employ in your practice the more and more you do this. Just to have tinder on you is smart. It's not that I'm always smart, but it's a smart move to make, and it really says how you're prepared for what you might need. And so in this sort of mishmash, I have a bunch of basswood bark, and some dry grasses in there. But again, we're looking at this dry, fibrous material. So, and some cedar bark. You know, that starts off looking like this. And like I said, you can agitate it with your hands, you can pound it with rocks, you can scrape it with the back edge of your knife, and you're gonna really rough it up, and you're gonna see those small fibers that make for such a useful material. So if I'm taking these materials, probably only need a bit of this. I have my sedges here. I'm going to lay that in with all of these tree bark fibers. These leaves, I'm going to crumple them up. If I was to just have a leaf tinder bundle, I would still be maintaining these principles. I would have the bigger leaves to the outside, slightly broken up leaves next layer in, they'd be more crumbled, all the way moving towards the center where I'm really breaking them down. So, just giving them like a bit of a rough handling here. Kind of maintaining that shape. Using my thumbs like you would like a pinch pot and just keeping that depression open. Oh, these seed heads. Here, that fern really breaks down, right? So that's going in next. Goldenrod. I'm going to strip it out because I really just want the old flower heads that have become seeds. I'll lay that in. And then I'm laying in this dandelion. Oh, and a little bit of coltsfoot. All right. So here we have something that fits in the hand, 2 hands. If it's particularly moist out or the weather is inclement, then I'm going to go with a bigger tinder bundle. If it's really ideal, then I can get away with a much smaller tinder bundle. We're seeing larger stuff to the outside, moving towards smaller and smaller stuff to the inside. This concept of coal extender, creating a nest where we're using our thumbs to create a depression, and that's going to give us a place to put that small coal that we're going to then bring this material up and around and start to give air to it. There are times in the year and locations that you'll be that sourcing material is going to be more difficult. So as soon as you know that you need to build a fire, start thinking about tinder. It can be the hardest material to source at times. And if you're dealing with any sort of wet conditions, the more creative you are about sourcing it, the better. So if I am able to find dryish materials in a wet environment, something that you can do is start tucking them into the inside of your clothes along your body where you're not going to sweat heavily, and you can just use the natural heat of your body to help dry it out. This can make a difference enough to work. The other thing is that after there's been a lot of rain, what is available is going to be pretty saturated, and so you need to start thinking about how you're going to harvest material that's been protected by cover. So I would recommend looking underneath large logs. I would be looking for crevices, holes in areas that have got a little bit of a roof-like structure. I just walked by this rock. It had this nice overhang, and you could see tucked in that there were dry leaves. There are sometimes little homes of rodents, squirrels, mice, etc., that you're going to find like leaves tucked in at the bases of trees where they've been living. And so you want to be able to gather these materials, even if it's 1 leaf, 3 leaves here, etc., and start to amass them and put them into a dry spot in your pockets, along your body, that's going to be protected from getting any wet for any further. I like to look along old rock walls, and they are very common in New England, and it really says something to me when I go to new environments, and I say I visit my family in Texas. I am not sticking my hands into holes in rock walls. So still be aware of your surroundings, pay attention, but you're going to want to get your mind working around spaces that have some sort of cover to them that's going to protect them from any sort of rain, etc., that's coming down out of the sky. My final thought is that the more the merrier. So you need plenty of material to work with. So I would say something like so. A nice large orange, when compressed of material, is going to be enough. So beginners often don't gather enough, and their tinder bundles are too loose in their construction. You want to make sure that you're going into it with plenty of material. So gather enough and go from there.